I'm Emily Park, 28, the night shift security supervisor at Meridian Financial Tower. The elevator doors slid open with their familiar whisper, and there they were. My entire family crowded into my marble lobby like lost tourists, their designer clothes catching the afternoon light streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows. Mom clutched her Hermes bag tighter when she saw me approaching in my crisp security uniform, the gold nameplate reading, E. Park, Supervisor, gleaming against the navy fabric. Emily. Dad's voice cracked slightly, the same way it had when I told them I was dropping out of law school 5 years ago to take a night security job. We need to talk. The scent of their expensive perfumes mixed with the lobby's subtle vanilla air freshener, creating something cloying that made my stomach turn. Behind the marble reception desk, Marcus, my day shift counterpart, pretended to study his computer screen, but I caught his curious glances. The afternoon sun painted everything in golden hues, making my family look like actors on a stage they didn't belong on. Here, I kept my voice level, professional, the same tone I used when escorting trespassers from the building. My sister Jennifer shifted uncomfortably in her Louboutin heels, the red soles clicking against the polished floor. Maybe we could go somewhere more private? Before I go further, tell me in the comments where you're watching from, and if you're hooked already, a like and subscribe will keep these stories coming. I studied their faces. The way Mom's foundation couldn't quite hide the dark circles under her eyes, how Dad's usually perfect hair looked disheveled, the tremor in Jennifer's manicured hands. Something was wrong. Terribly wrong. The conference room, I said finally, gesturing toward the glass-walled space where I usually met with building management. My keycard beeped against the reader, and I held the door open, watching them file in like defendants entering a courtroom. The room smelled of leather and coffee, afternoon sunlight streaming through the windows that overlooked the city. 28 floors below, traffic moved like blood through arteries, people living their lives while mine was about to change forever. Sit, I said, remaining standing. In my uniform, in my building, I held the power here. It was a strange reversal from every family dinner where they'd looked at me with barely concealed disappointment. Dad cleared his throat. Emily, there's been a situation. What kind of situation? The words came out sharper than I intended, but something in their body language, the way they couldn't meet my eyes, how Jennifer kept fidgeting with her wedding ring, set every alarm bell in my head ringing. Mom finally looked up, her eyes red-rimmed. Your father's company is under investigation. Federal investigation. The air conditioning hummed softly overhead, the only sound in the sudden silence. Through the glass walls, I could see Marcus at his desk, answering phones, living in a world where families didn't implode on Tuesday afternoons. What does that have to do with me? But even as I asked, pieces were clicking together. Dad's construction company. The one that had paid for Jennifer's wedding, Mom's car, the house in Westchester they'd been so proud of. The same company they'd wanted me to join as their legal counsel before I'd thrown my life away on security work. They froze our accounts, Jennifer whispered. Everything. The house, the cars, even my trust fund. I felt something cold settle in my chest. How much? Emily, Dad's voice was pleading now, we know we haven't always supported your choices. But your family. And family helps family. The afternoon light was shifting, casting longer shadows across the conference table. In a few hours, I'd be starting my night shift, walking these same halls in darkness, protecting a building full of empty offices and sleeping computers. But right now, in this moment, I was the one with power. How much? I repeated. Mom's voice was barely audible. 2 million. Maybe more. The number hung in the air like smoke. $2 million. More money than I'd see in a lifetime of night shifts. More money than existed in my modest savings account, built penny by penny from a job they'd mocked at every family gathering. The lawyers think if we can show the court that we have family support, demonstrate financial stability. Dad trailed off, his meaning clear. They wanted me to be their character witness. Their proof of family unity. The daughter they dismissed and belittled, now their potential salvation. I walked to the window, looking out at the city sprawling below. Somewhere out there, Federal agents were building a case against my father. Somewhere out there, my family's world was crumbling while mine remained solid, built on the foundation of honest work they'd never respected. Emily. Jennifer's voice was small, younger than her 32 years. Will you help us? I turned back to face them, these people who shared my blood but had never shared my struggles. The afternoon sun was behind me now, casting my shadow across their upturned faces. But before I could answer, my radio crackled to life. Emily, we have a situation on the 23rd floor. Federal agents are here with a warrant. The blood drained from Dad's face as my radio crackled again. Emily, they're asking for you specifically. Something about a family member. Through the conference room's glass walls, I watched the elevator numbers climb. 15, 16, 17. My family sat frozen around the table like mannequins in a store window, their expensive clothes suddenly looking like costumes in a play that had gone horribly wrong. They followed us, Mom whispered, her voice barely audible above the air conditioning's hum. Oh God, they followed us here. I keyed my radio with steady fingers, muscle memory from 5 years of night shifts, keeping my voice calm. Copy that, Marcus. I'll be right up. The weight of their stares pressed against my back as I clipped the radio to my belt. Stay here. Don't move. Don't call anyone. The elevator ride to the 23rd floor felt endless, each floor number lighting up like a countdown to something I couldn't name. The familiar scent of the building, that mixture of cleaning supplies and recycled air, usually comforted me, but now it felt suffocating. Agent Sarachin was waiting when the doors opened, her FBI badge catching the fluorescent light. I'd seen her before during routine security briefings, but never like this, never with that predatory focus that made my skin crawl. Miss Park. Her voice was crisp, professional. We need to discuss your family's visit today. They're in conference room A, I said, leading her down the hallway. My footsteps echoed against the polished floors, each sound sharp and final. But I should tell you, I haven't spoken to them in 6 months. Agent Chen's eyebrows rose slightly. 6 months? That's interesting, considering your father listed you as a character reference in his preliminary defense filing. The words hit me like a physical blow. I stopped walking, my hand instinctively reaching for the wall to steady myself. He what? You didn't know? There was something almost sympathetic in her voice now. According to the documents we received this morning, you've been financially supporting the family business. Significant contributions over the past 2 years. My mouth went dry. The hallway seemed to stretch endlessly in both directions, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead like angry insects. That's impossible. I work security. I make $42,000 a year. Agent Chen pulled out a tablet, swiping through screens with practiced efficiency. Bank records show regular transfers from an account in your name to Park Construction LLC. $50,000 monthly, starting in January 2023. The world tilted sideways. I gripped the wall harder, my uniform suddenly feeling too tight, too hot. Show me. She turned the tablet toward me, and there it was, my name, my social security number, an account I'd never opened making transfers I'd never authorized. The numbers blurred together as my vision tunneled, but the pattern was clear. $50,000 every month, like clockwork. Miss Park. Agent Chen's voice seemed to come from very far away. Are you all right? I wasn't all right. Nothing was all right. My family hadn't just come here for help. They'd been using my identity for 2 years, funneling money through fake accounts, making me an unwitting accomplice in whatever scheme had brought the FBI to my building. I need to see them, I managed, my voice sounding strange and hollow in the empty hallway. That's not advisable.
Now.
Agent Chen studied my face for a long moment, then nodded.
All right.
But I'll be listening. The walk back to the conference room felt like a death march. Through the glass walls, I could see my family exactly where I'd left them, but they looked different now, smaller, more desperate. Dad was pacing, his phone pressed to his ear. Mom sat with her head in her hands. Jennifer stared out the window like she was planning an escape route. I swiped my keycard and stepped inside. The conversation stopped immediately. Emily, Dad said, ending his call with a sharp tap. We were just discussing how you've been stealing my identity for 2 years? My voice was deadly quiet, the same tone I used with drunk executives who thought their corner offices made them untouchable. The silence that followed was deafening. Outside, the city hummed with afternoon traffic, people going about their normal lives while mine imploded in a glass box 23 floors above the street. It wasn't stealing, Jennifer said finally. We were going to pay it back. Once the Riverside project came through. Shut up. The words came out harder than I intended, but I was past caring about their feelings. Just shut up and listen. I walked to the head of the table, the same spot where I'd stood during countless security briefings, where I'd learned to command respect through competence instead of birthright. The afternoon sun slanted through the windows, casting everything in harsh, unforgiving light. For 5 years, you've treated me like a failure, like my job was something to be ashamed of. You made jokes about your daughter, the security guard, at every family dinner, every holiday, every wedding. Mom looked up, tears streaming down her cheeks. Emily, you never meant to get caught. I pulled out my phone, scrolling through my banking app with trembling fingers. But you did mean to forge my signature. You did mean to open accounts in my name. You did mean to make me an accessory to federal crimes. The account was there, just like Agent Chun had shown me. Hundreds of thousands of dollars flowing through an account I'd never seen, bearing my name like a scarlet letter. We were desperate, Dad said, his voice breaking. The Riverside deal fell through, and we had investors breathing down our necks. We just needed time. Time to what? Destroy my life along with yours. Through the glass walls, I could see Agent Chen approaching with 2 other agents, their faces grim and purposeful. The elevator numbers were climbing again, 20, 21, 22. They're coming back, I said, watching my family's faces crumble as they followed my gaze. And when they get here, I'm going to tell them exactly what I told you 5 years ago when you disowned me for choosing this job over law school. Jennifer was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks in dark rivers. Emily, please. We're family. I looked at each of them in turn. These people who'd share my childhood, my DNA, my name. These strangers who'd stolen my identity while mocking my choices. The conference room door opened, and Agent Chin stepped inside with her colleagues. The afternoon sun was lower now, casting longer shadows across the table where my family sat like defendants awaiting sentencing. Miss Park, Agent Chin said, we're ready for your statement. I straightened my shoulders, feeling the weight of my badge, my responsibility, my integrity. 5 years of night shifts had taught me the value of honest work, of protecting what mattered, of standing guard against those who would take what wasn't theirs. But as I opened my mouth to speak, my radio crackled with an urgent message that changed everything. All units, we have a break-in on the 15th floor. Silent alarm triggered. Suspect is still in the building. The radio crackled again, Marcus's voice tight with tension. Emily, building security cameras show the suspect heading for the stairwell. They're moving toward your floor. Agent Chen's hand moved instinctively to her weapon as I processed the information. 23rd floor. Conference room, A. My family trapped in a glass box with federal agents while an unknown intruder climbed toward us through the emergency stairs. Lock down the floor. I commanded into my radio, years of training taking over. Seal all stairwell access points. I'm initiating code silver. The building's emergency lighting flickered on, bathing everything in an eerie red glow. Through the conference room's glass walls, I watched office workers on neighboring floors look up from their desks in confusion as automated announcements echoed through the building. What's happening? Jennifer's voice was shrill with panic. Someone's in the building who shouldn't be, I said, moving to the window. 23 floors below, police cars were already pulling up to the main entrance, their red and blue lights painting the street in urgent colors. Agent Chin spoke rapidly into her phone while her colleagues positioned themselves by the door. We need to evacuate these civilians.
No.
I turned from the window, my voice carrying the authority of someone who'd spent 5 years learning every inch of this building. The stairwells are compromised. We're safer here until backup arrives. Dad stood up shakily. Emily, maybe we should. Sit down. The command came out sharp and final. All of you. Nobody moves until I say so. My radio crackled. Emily, we've got eyes on the suspect. Male, approximately 6 feet, wearing a maintenance uniform. He's on the 22nd floor now, heading for the service elevator. Service elevator. My blood ran cold. That elevator had keycard access to every floor, including this one. And I was the only person in the building with override codes. Marcus, kill power to the service elevator.
Now.
Already done. But Emily, there's something else. The suspect, he's carrying what looks like a briefcase. And he's asking for you by name. The conference room fell silent except for the hum of emergency lighting and Mom's quiet sobbing. Agent Chin was staring at me with new interest, her phone still pressed to her ear. Asking for me? I keyed the radio again. What exactly did he say? He told the security camera on 22 that he has something that belongs to Emily Park. Something about the truth. The truth. The words echoed in my mind as I looked at my family, these people who'd built their lives on lies, who dragged me into their web of deception without my knowledge or consent. What truth could a stranger possibly have that involved me? Agent Chen ended her call and approached me. Miss Park, is there anything you haven't told us? Anyone who might want to contact you about your family's situation? Before I could answer, the lights went out completely. Emergency power kicked in a second later, but in that moment of absolute darkness, I heard something that made my blood freeze. The soft ding of an elevator arriving on our floor. That's impossible, I whispered. I killed power to the service elevator. Agent Chen drew her weapon, motioning for her colleagues to take positions. Is there another way up? The freight elevator. I'd forgotten about the freight elevator that connected to the parking garage. It ran on a separate power grid, one that wouldn't be affected by my emergency shutdown. Conference room B, I said, pointing down the hallway. There's a freight elevator that opens directly into the office space. If he knows the building layout. The sound of footsteps echoed from the hallway, slow, deliberate, confident. Someone who knew exactly where they were going. Emily Park. The voice carried clearly through the glass walls, calm and professional. I know you're here. I have something that belongs to you. Agent Chin positioned herself by the door, weapon raised. Federal agents. Identify yourself. My name is David Kim. I'm a forensic accountant with the Securities and Exchange Commission, and I have evidence that will clear Miss Park of all charges. The words hit me like a physical blow. Clear me of charges? I looked at Agent Chen, whose expression had shifted from suspicion to confusion. What charges? I called out. The money laundering charges your family is about to pin on you, David Kim's voice replied. The ones they've been setting you up for since this investigation began. My legs gave out, and I sank into the nearest chair. Through the glass walls, I could see a figure in a maintenance uniform standing in the hallway, briefcase in hand. He was younger than I'd expected, maybe 35, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. That's impossible, Dad said, but his voice lacked conviction. We would never. You already did. David Kim held up a tablet, pressing it against the glass wall so we could all see the screen. Bank records, forged signatures, falsified employment documents. Your daughter has been the perfect patsy, a security guard with access to building systems, someone who could theoretically move money without detection. The tablet showed a complex web of financial transactions, all leading back to accounts bearing my name, my social security number, my forged signature. But there were other documents too, emails between my family members discussing how to manage the Emily situation if the investigation got too close. You're going to let them arrest me, I said, the words coming out flat and emotionless. Your own daughter. Jennifer was crying harder now, but Dad just stared at the floor. Mom looked up with desperate eyes. Emily, we never thought it would go this far. We thought we could fix it before anyone found out. Agent Chen lowered her weapon slightly. Mr. Kim, how did you get into this building? Miss Park's keycard, he replied, holding up a security badge. The real one. The one she reported stolen 6 months ago, but never bothered to deactivate because she thought it was just a mistake. 6 months ago. The last time I'd spoken to my family. The last time I'd been to their house for Sunday dinner, when I'd left my purse unattended while helping Mom in the kitchen. They cloned it, I whispered. They've had building access this whole time. David Kim nodded. They've been using your credentials to access financial systems, to create the paper trail that would implicate you if their scheme collapsed. Which it did, 3 days ago, when the Riverside Project investors discovered the missing funds. The emergency lighting cast everything in hellish red shadows. Through the windows, I could see more police cars arriving, FBI vehicles, news vans. My building, my sanctuary, had become the center of a federal investigation. The briefcase, Agent Chin said. What's in it? Evidence that will prove Ms. Park's innocence, David Kim replied. Security footage from this building showing her family members accessing restricted areas using her cloned keycard. Bank records proving the forged signatures. And most importantly, recorded conversations between the family members discussing how to frame their daughter if the investigation got too close. He set the briefcase on the floor and stepped back, hands visible. Everything you need to clear her name and arrest the real criminals. I stood up slowly, my legs shaking. 5 years of night shifts, 5 years of honest work, 5 years of building a life they'd mocked and dismissed. And all that time, they'd been planning to destroy it. Emily, Dad said, his voice breaking. You have to understand.
No.
I walked to the conference room door, my hand steady on the handle. I don't have to understand anything. Agent Chen was already moving toward the briefcase, her colleagues securing the hallway. The investigation would continue, but now it would focus on the real criminals, the family that had raised me, loved me, and ultimately betrayed me in the most fundamental way possible. I opened the door and stepped into the hallway, where David Kim waited with patient eyes. Why? I asked him. Why did you risk breaking into a federal crime scene to help me? He smiled sadly. Because I know what it's like to be betrayed by family. And because someone needs to stand up for the people who do honest work in a dishonest world. Behind me, I could hear Agent Chen reading my family their rights, their voices mixing with the sound of handcuffs clicking into place. The afternoon sun was setting now, painting the city in shades of gold and crimson. In a few hours, I would start my night shift. I would walk these halls in darkness, protecting a building full of empty offices and sleeping computers. But tonight would be different. Tonight, I would walk these halls as a free woman, cleared of crimes I never committed, vindicated by the truth my family had tried so hard to bury. I turned back toward the conference room one last time, looking through the glass walls at the people who had shaped my childhood and nearly destroyed my future. Mom was sobbing into her hands. Jennifer stared at me with desperate, pleading eyes. Dad sat in stunned silence as Agent Chin secured his handcuffs. They were waiting for me to say something, some final word, some gesture of forgiveness or condemnation. 5 years ago, when they'd mocked my choice to leave law school for security work, I told them I would rather be honest and poor than rich and corrupt. Now, as federal agents led them away in handcuffs, I had only one thing to say. I told you so. The elevator doors closed behind them with a soft whisper, carrying away the people who had given me life and then tried to take it away. I stood alone in the hallway, surrounded by the building I had protected for 5 years, watching the sun set over a city that suddenly felt full of possibilities. My radio crackled one last time. Emily, night shift starts in 30 minutes. You ready? I smiled, straightening my uniform, feeling the weight of my badge, my real badge, earned through honest work and integrity. Copy that, I replied. I'm ready,